Welcome to Ask the Tech Coach, brought to you by the TeacherCast Educational Network. If you are in charge of professional development and looking to build an innovative digital learning experience, this is the podcast for you. Join us each week as we uncover strategies that tech coaches are using to drive their digital transformations one classroom at a time. And now for your host, with over 2 decades of experience working with tech coaches and ed tech companies from all around the world, Jeff Bradbury.
Hello, and welcome back to Ask the Tech Coach. My name is Jeff Bradbury, and welcome to the podcast for digital learning leaders and instructional coaches. In this week's episode, we have a fantastic conversation with my good friend, Dr. Jim Beagley. And today, we're going to answer 2 important questions. First, we're going to talk a little bit about this concept of digital learning. What is it? What does it mean? But more specifically, what are we doing with this term in the year 2023 and beyond? And second, we're going to take a look at the innovation curve. This diagram, this graphic that we throw up on a lot of our presentations to show which teachers are in front and which teachers we need more support with. And hopefully by the end of today, we're going to come up with a great definition for how we can move our districts forward. So if you like any of these topics, stick around for more on Ask the Tech Coach. Now, that's not the only reason I'm excited about the episode today. Today, we're also thrilled to share more information about the big announcements that we made last week on the episode. Of course, we talked about ISTE and some of the great sessions that are going to be happening at ISTE. We talked about this new book that I'm writing called Impact Standards and how we're going to start to use these impact standards in the classrooms. But also, I'm excited to share that this week I started my new position as the Director of Digital Learning, had a chance to get into the school district, meet many of our district leaders, took a little tour of some of our buildings, and I have been having a blast getting to know everybody, getting into my office, decorating it a little bit. And I want to say thank you to everybody who last week took the time to write, to tweet, and really to reach out just to kind of say good things about, how they're doing, but also some of the congratulatory things. So before we really get into the episode today, thank you guys for taking the time to reach out. I really appreciate it. And I'm so glad that you are all here to share on this journey with me. And I hope we're here to share on this journey with you guys. My guest today is the current Director of Distance Learning for the Administrative Office of the Pennsylvania Courts, and has been in education and specifically in ed tech for more than 25 years. I'm excited to have him on the show today. I want to bring on my good friend, Dr. Jim Beagley. Jim, how are you today? Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeff. It's great to be here, finally, after all these years.
I am excited to have you on. I'm excited to start this series about building culture, building digital learning. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know recently you took on a new position, but you've been in education for many years as a tech director. Who is Jim Beagley?
I've done everything from technology sales to schools to, working in instructional technology, being a tech director, being instructional technologist, from small school districts to colleges. Most recently, I was at a small private school in central Pennsylvania here. So I've kind of run the gamut from K-20, if you will, leading educational technology. I even did a stint for some years at the Pennsylvania Department of Education, working out of the Office of Educational Technology.
Well, I'm excited to have you on here today. We've been talking about this a lot really for the last couple of years, but even more recently, we've been having these discussions about, what does classroom instruction look like? What should it look like? And, specifically today, we're going to be diving into this conversation of what is digital learning? How should we define it? So let's just kind of open up here with one of my first questions here. But when you're looking at a classroom, when you are in that tech director's seat, what should instruction be looking like today? Many educators have shied away from technology. Some have gone towards it. Some school districts are all in. Some are, a little less Microsoft and a little less Google than they used to be. But when we're looking at putting together a vision for the future of our classrooms, what do you think it should look like?
So it's probably a hot take on my part that I'm not a use technology because you have to use technology kind of person. There are situations in our classrooms where it totally fits, and I can see it in every classroom, sciences and some of those like that. But sometimes it's also okay to just have kids reading a book and not being on technology in an English class, let's say, or a foreign language class. I'm not a big advocate of using technology for technology's sake, I guess is probably the best way to say it. But in today's classrooms, I think you've got to get kids meeting them where they are. And you have kids, I have kids, that they are constantly hounded by media. So we need to be able to meet them and be able to deliver that curriculum to them in ways that they can do it and they can digest it. I think the days of sage on the stage are long gone. You know what I mean? Those types of things. We need to get kids in using video and how they can. I've been a big advocate of getting kids to move up the Bloom's taxonomy scale and letting them be creative. They don't have to necessarily write a paper when they can create a drawing or they can create a video or do something else that would interpret that. Their knowledge of a project or understanding of a topic. As you know, I'm big into social studies. So, getting kids to just look and interact with historical documents differently is a way they can interact in the classroom and be engaged. Be engaged, I guess is the word.
And I agree with that, right? Because right now, when we're recording this, there's so much talk right now about AI and Chat GPT. And there seems to be a few different camps. And I don't know if you saw the Facebook post a couple of days ago from our friend Steve Dembo out in Chicago. But I guess as the story goes, he showed the students Chat GPT. And I guess the students agreed that it should be banned, which is awesome to hear because they're kind of learning how to police themselves when, Steve's a very out there, very forward thinking guy. And he's like, no, look at all the different things that we can use this for. Right. And I look at artificial intelligence, in that same way. I think it's one thing to open up an AI chatbot or something and say, give me 3 ways to bake a cake, but the kids still have to go out and bake the cake. They can't just use the information. And I don't know. I look at artificial intelligence. I mean, it really is just an extension of a Google search.
Yeah, my son actually just did this, and he had a paper to write on a topic for a class, and he went out and got the basic information from ChatGPT and then took that and expanded the words and added his own knowledge and information to it. But it gave him the basis, not like you could do the same thing if you went to Wikipedia.
Right. Exactly.
And got the idea, but people say, don't go to Wikipedia because it's inaccurate. But I could go and get basic information there and then add my own knowledge and my own words or other research in there, and then it's an acceptable answer.
And ChatGPT is in that same infancy state too. I roughly did a search for, write a biography about myself. Now, it didn't know who I was.
One of our mutual friends did that recently.
Right? It wrote a biography about Jeff Bradbury. Now, how many people in the world in history have had that name? And it was entertaining. But then I changed it to write a biography of Jeff Bradbury from TeacherCast. And you could tell basically it was scraping my about page. Nice. Okay. That's a great way to start having the conversation about, is it 100% factual? And if it is 100% factual, is it the right factual?
Right. So the other thing to deal with it too is I think it really comes down to the prompt that you put into it, which requires some thought. I could say, hey, it's Women's History Month. I could say, write me a blog post about Harriet Tubman, let's say, and it would give me, X number of words about Harriet Tubman. But then if I say, add quotes from experts or historians or quotes from her and, or relate it to Women's History Month. And so as you expand that, so it gets kids to think about phrasing specific questions and getting them to think. And it's like computers are only as smart as the questions that you ask them. So you really have to deep dive into what prompt. It's like advanced Google searching. And you and I have taught these types of techniques. yes, I can ask for who is Harriet Tubman in a Google search, but if you narrow it down using, I only want sites from that are .edu and like those types of advanced search techniques and information literacy, then it takes it one step further for kids. They have all this information at the tip of their fingers, and how do we get them to get the right information and digest through all the noise, if you will?
Let's take a step back here, because today really is about trying to figure out how we're going to define what learning should be. And this really, as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, is the first in a series of shows that we're going to be doing here on how do we create a more refined culture for digital learning. Jim, you've been around for 100 years or so. Where we are right now in 2023, really towards the end of the school year. I know we're still in the middle, but we're towards the end here. ISTE registration's already out. How do you define the term digital learning?
Probably broadly just anything that involves the use of digital resources. And I'm going to vaguely put digital resources in a category. And by that, it could be anything from ebooks to digital primary sources to movies, YouTube. So as kids, I digest that and take that in. Learning from those resources is those types of things, but it also includes topics of, personalized learning and blended learning and, individualized instruction and those types of things, and flipped classrooms and all those buzzwords that we've heard over the years, but integrating some portion of technology, if you will. Now we're looking into more of the augmented reality and AR and VR. That's huge these days, and we can put kids in locations that they don't have to take field trips and those kind of things.
I love that you bring that up, because we've been looking at VR stuff for more than a decade, right? And it seems, I often say, and forgive me on this one, but there's people who fix your car, and then there's mechanics, right? And it's the same thing. There's amazing people out there who are STEM educators, and then there's people who might happen to be working in a room that they call a makerspace. And that's not pushing a thought on one type of person, but I've seen a lot of school districts over the last 10 years or so, they invest in a technology, right? They invest in VR, or they invest in iPads, they invest in something, and then you walk into the classroom and it's still sitting in that box because, that virtual reality might do a great 3D underwater experience, but no one's teaching underwater this week, so we're going to put that over there.
Right.
And
so
then
we had
years and years go by, right?
Yeah, at my last school, we had a TV studio that had sat unused for 7 years or something, because no one knew how to use the equipment. So we went in and we sort of, took away the expensive equipment and started using some of the easier stuff, using OBS, making it easier for the kids to use and just get started, get our feet wet, and, getting them to record, and then finding opportunities to get teachers to come into that space and use it. So we actually, over Christmas, had the teachers come in and read 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, with a green screen in the background. The kids got to edit the video. They got to interact with teachers and get them, hey, this is what we want. So again, it's steps and stages of getting to use these spaces for different things. Well, it's just for, TV news. No, it's not. We can do lectures out of that space, and it's simple. It doesn't have to be elaborate.
I 100% agree. Right now we're recording this podcast through an application online called StreamYard. And yes, it's great for podcasters. It's great for live streaming, broadcasting, etc. But one of my favorite things to do with this is you stick it into a third grade class, and now you're doing a TV show or a game show, or, forget the streaming aspect of it. You've now got a video camera where you can move other video screens around really easy. Yeah. Why not put that in the hands of an elementary student? And now they're, you've got 5 presidents, and every kid gets to be a president, and now you're doing presidential, Jeopardy or something like that, right? Lots of different things, but it wasn't always that case. I'm sure you can remember the time as, as an administrator, as a tech director, where it was difficult to get teachers to buy into the concept of using a computer, using technology, or, hey, what am I going to use that iPad for? I'm going to throw the word Google Cardboard in here because that's on the top of my mind. Like,
no, right.
Let's do the way back machine here with Dr. Beagley. What was that like of just spending money so that way, you could say you're doing technology, but starting this journey of tech integration? I don't know if I'm talking the 90s or the early 2000s.
I've done it a couple of times. The biggest thing was to get it into the hands of the teachers. We gave the teachers laptops once, to school. I don't know. Geez, I can't remember how long ago that was. Getting them to buy in, getting them to use it. And then once they saw the benefit of it, then they would encourage the kids to use it more. The other thing, giving them quick ideas for lessons and ways that they can get kids engaged using the tools that they have. Taking, as you said, an iPad and let's create a stop motion video. Oh, that's so hard to do. No, I can show you in 2 or 3 minutes how to create a stop motion video using Doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When we went to one-to-one Chromebooks at my school, we gave them to the teachers first and let them use them and have training on them. Then we gave them to the students. So they knew what was coming. It wasn't throw them to the students and let the teachers figure it out. It was let the teachers, figure it out, then gave it to the students.
I remember doing a podcast episode early in TeacherCast with a CTE teacher. I don't want to mention his name because he's no longer with us, but he was telling me the story of how, the day he brought in that second generation iPad for the first time, and it had a camera on it. And the students were going, what do I do with this? And his response was, I don't know, go figure it out and come back later. And they turned that into, how do you become a documentarian, or how do you take video of all of those different things. And he just happened to have the whereabout to say, I don't know, go figure it out. Whereas even now, many teachers are, if I don't know how to do it, you're not going to do it either. And that's what I'm hoping these next few shows that we're going to do is going to help us figure out, how do we create that vision, but how do we help teachers become more confident? But
yeah, so then, we talk about there's the smart boards have been around forever.
Yep.
But we got to find new ways to get kids to be able to engage with that. So now using, a teacher could be at the front of the room using, writing on a thing, and the students can be at their desk using an app, an extension like Cami, let's say, to edit the same PDF and take notes, on their Chromebook or on their mobile device or whatever it is. So, there's that interactiveness in it with it, so the kids they don't have to have pencil and paper, although I understand that at some levels is beneficial.
Was it easier before? I mean, I remember going to ISTE, and everywhere you walked in the vendor floor, every single company had the end-all solution.
Yeah.
Right? Microsoft had everything, and Google had everything, and I don't even remember the companies that are long gone now, but I mean, they had every solution for everything, right? I mean, was that easier as a tech director because you're spending your money on? Why wasn't it?
Because it was just too much. I was always a big advocate of find the right solution and stick with it. I was never a let's go grab the new shiny thing. I rode wiki spaces till it died, till it went away kind of thing. You know what I mean? Because it just worked, or Blogger or whatever the tools were.
Was that easy to sell to your administrative team? Because
yes.
hey, I'm putting, X number of thousands of dollars into this, and or again, we're buying iPads. Thanks, that's it.
Thanks.
We're buying iPads.
We bought iPads, but you would bring teachers in and say, okay, we need an app to do X, and we would send out a couple of those apps to teachers, and then they would evaluate them and then come back to them. Like we were looking for a note-taking app, and so. Send out a couple of different ones, and then the teacher's like, hey, we want to use Notability. Okay, great. So we picked Notability because it had all of the features that the majority of the teachers wanted. Then I'm training teachers on one app. I'm not training teachers on 50. A teacher comes to me, well, we need a way to be able to have kids on Chromebooks edit video. Okay, well, let's find a solution. So let's go to, all right, WeVideo is the way to go. It's not WeVideo and Jump Cut and this and that and this and that. I know some of the programs have different solutions, but let's find one, stick with it. And then I'm working, and you as an instructional coach, or the instructional coach in the building, whatever it is, only has to do one set of training. It's simple. But we're going to stick with this.
But that then just seems against where we're going. You're not teaching a kid Google Sheets. You're teaching them how to make a spreadsheet, so that way, no matter
Correct.
what application, right?
Right.
So there must have been a time where that thinking it's changed.
I don't know whether I've ever changed it. My mantra has always been, I could teach you to word process on an Apple IIe green screen, because it's the same concept.
Nouns and verbs. It's all it is.
It's all it is. And I got to highlight something, and I'm just typing. I don't need Microsoft. I argue this with our business ed teachers. You're not teaching Google Apps. You're not teaching Microsoft Word. You should be teaching word processing skills. You should be teaching spreadsheet skills. Because I can go to ChatGPT right now and ask it to write me a formula for Excel.
Right. And I think we've been trying that, right? Here, give me the Excel formula for this. Give me the Google Sheets formula, just to see if it's the same thing or how similar it would be.
Right.
I remember pre-pandemic, but a few years ago, where you would walk into ISTE, and again, every company had their monster solution. And then I remember very clearly, the next year, it might have been Chicago, but then that was the first year of integrations. Right. That was the first year of, here's my Chrome extension that also fits with Google Classroom, with Teams, with PowerSchool.
That makes selling them easier.
But let's talk a little bit about that, right? Because now then you came into this world where it wasn't, here's the one here. No, here's Notability, and we're going to do all Notability, or here's WeVideo. It's now, even in my district now, we have 4 different options for video. Right? You want to do short video, you got Flipgrid. You want to do editing, you got WeVideo. You want something in the middle, you got Canva. If you don't want that, you got,
Adobe Create,
Adobe Create or Apple Clips, or,
right.
But that starts causing a problem for the teachers, because now you walk in and go, I don't know what to do, but I've got 75 things that I could do. Oh, forget it. So I want to talk a little bit about that from the coaching point of view, but talk to me a little bit about that from the administrative point of view, right? Because now we're living in the world where there are 500 solutions for, I want to make a video.
Right.
Many of them are free. They all have acceptable use policies. Take it away.
So you hit on the point, and part of it is, and depending on varies by district and varies by technology director. Some of them lock everything down. So you can't install apps, you can't install extensions, and you can't do this, you can't do that. But my mantra has always been, these are the 1 or 2 applications, let's just stick with video editing, that we're going to support. That doesn't mean you can't use other ones, but these are the ones that we're going to support and we're going to use, and we're going to encourage others to use, until we get enough adoption or enough, at least feedback on maybe a third one or a different solution, which comes out of our, I'm sure in your district, you have lead teachers or teachers who are just push the technology envelope a little bit more.
Yep.
We had those, and they would come back to me and say, hey, we like this better. Look, can we switch? And we look at it, we have a conversation. I'm like, yeah, that works. You know what I mean?
Right.
Why, this has more features. We'd like to do this. I'm also one that I never like to push out a bunch of extensions, because it just slows the computers down. So let's just talk about what extensions we want the kids to have in Chrome or apps on their iPad, because it's all just becomes then distractions. So focusing on it allows, it's fewer support calls. I don't have support calls for 5 apps. I have support calls for 2. I'm only managing 2 or managing licenses for 2, let's say. And then the trainers and the lead teachers, or even the department heads, are only supporting or encouraging the use of 2 or 3. So
as a tech director, do you care?
No, I don't.
I mean,
was
like,
always
again, using video, what do you care if it's Video versus Final Cut versus,
I don't care.
Microsoft Video Editor? Like,
You know what?
it doesn't matter, right?
I actually had a couple
money aside, of course, right?
Money aside, I had a couple of teachers that were doing it on CapCut on their phone, because they were good at it.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's
care.
okay.
And that's okay. You're doing it. You're using it. It's what works for you. But I'm going to support. These are the ones that I'm going to support officially.
And I love the fact that even though there's so many things, they all are starting, so they start for a couple years, but they're all working together, right? I mean, I remember the first time I heard the term app smashing from our good friend John Carippo of let's take this and let's put it over here, or let's make the graphic in this application, then we're going to put it over onto our video platform. And how many of these different things can you basically get one iPad to be doing? And this is years ago. But,
right.
There's just that concept that learning is learning. Let's make it happen. But I want to talk about something that you said, which is, finding those lead teachers. I sometimes here on the show refer to them as generals. But before we get into that, one of the things that I think we're going to work on over the next few episodes here is coming up with a standard definition of terms. Give me your 1 sentence, 2 sentence technology integration is. Let's start with that. So how do you define technology integration to somebody at the beginning of a presentation?
I don't know. I haven't done that in a long time. That's a trick question. I guess I don't know, because it's just it's ingrained anymore. It's like,
it's a hard one, right?
It's a really hard one. I can think of the differences between information technology and educational technology, but like technology integration is just, I guess.
I'll give you the definition, and I'll show you where this comes from.
Okay, and then I can probably build off of that.
I'll give you this. I'll give you the definition first here. I find this fascinating to anybody out there who's listening. Technology integration is the use of technology resources, meaning computers, mobile devices, smartphones, tablets, digital cameras, social media platforms and networks, software applications, the internet, etc., in daily classroom practices and in the management of a school. That was 2007.
Okay, that's not technology integration.
That was 2007 Edutopia.
Okay,
I found that definition.
But
I find it interesting that they say
technology. Yeah,
it's technology integration if it's under the management of a school. I love that they added that stuff in there, right? Because right now, what is technology integration? Well, you're putting Chat GPT into a Twitter bot, and you're trying to pull out something to make a video out, like all of those things together. Or I know you've got a music background. I know you've got, you're always out there doing, wrestling things with your family. If I'm a band student and I walk into the music room and I sit down, take out my violin, and I use my phone to have a tuner, is that technology integration? I'd argue yes.
I would argue yes, yeah.
So,
and I would also argue that if you're making music on that same device using GarageBand, I watched my son the other day show me a video of this artist. He was a singer, and he had some kind of digital board that he was mixing sounds with, and he could sing and make all of his background vocals and do everything right off of this little board. And he had guitars and trumpets and drums all on this board, and he was making music right off of it and singing his songs. And he was really popular with it. So they don't need full bands to create this music.
Well, is there a difference between using technology in your classroom and technology integration in your classroom? I think the answer is yes.
Yes, because I could use technology to just as a grade book.
Right.
But integrating it is, okay, I'm going to go back to my strengths. I'm going to have everybody pull up an image from the Library of Congress and do an exploration of a digital primary source. You know what I mean? And do an analysis on that. That's integration.
For anybody listening, I want your answer on that, right? Because even as a coach, we get that a lot from teachers, right? I don't need your help. I know how to use my board. Well, no, you're plugging your computer in and you're using it essentially as a mirror of your laptop, right? Like that's
Right.
not technology integration. That's
you're
showing your
PowerPoint.
computer screen with an 80-inch, viewing angle, right? Like
Right.
it's different.
In the
So
past, we used to hand out copies of PowerPoints, for kids to take notes on.
I've got two more for you here, and I love this conversation. How do you define the term digital learning?
I thought we did that one already. Digital learning.
We did technology integration, didn't we?
I thought we did digital learning.
We'll go back and fix it up.
Well, well, again, I think that the digital learning that's more of a it's a strategy, or a pedagogy that involves integrating that technology. So it's not just using it for the sake of using it. It's more like integrating it in different ways. And, you're looking at, like I think I said before, your blended learning, e-textbooks and those types of things, mobile learning, VR, I mentioned earlier. That's digital learning. So where you're learning from a digital source. And it's not just, okay, let's watch a YouTube video. It's like, let's watch a YouTube video that's broken up with ed puzzles.
Right.
And then we go back to that integration, as that app smashing or that integration with Google Classroom. So I take that ed puzzle as an extension that now goes into my Google Classroom and I can get a grade on it. So it's sort of breaking up that routine. I was never a big, again, I see people saying, well, I'm going to put on Ken Burns' Civil War for 8 hours or whatever in my class. Like, no, kids are going to go to sleep,
Right. Well,
so break it up a little bit.
And again, we talked a little earlier about, finding your generals and stuff like that. I want to ask you one more here. The term innovation, right? We have now directors of innovation. Well, according to the dictionary, innovation just means a new idea or method or an introduction to something new. Does that not mean that every kid who has an idea in class, which hopefully is all of them, is an innovator? And isn't every teacher who's trying something new an innovator?
Yes. Again, if a science teacher who's never done it before says, maybe we can 3D print something, they're innovating that in their classroom. Or I had a teacher that, how can we show the chicks that are hatching in our classrooms? It's like she's innovating in that classroom. Or whatever it is. How can we do stop motion videos of cells, or looking back on it? Or remember there used to be those videos that were like the overhead shot. They would put a picture on the screen and then throw it away and then do something else, those kind of pictures. Like just anything like that. It's always innovative. Just finding any new way to do something that they used to traditionally do is an innovator. And I encourage and applaud those people. And you can't necessarily reward them other than saying and highlight what they're doing somehow,
So here's the question of the day. And as a listener of this show and as a supporter of this show, I want anybody out there listening to help me out. You can find us on Twitter at Ask the Tech Coach. You can always find us over at teachercast.net. But here's what we're trying to figure out over the next few shows here. How do we get these teachers that might be bogged down with so much technology, so much stress, so much pressure, all of the post-pandemic stuff?
That was my dog. Sorry. He's still barking. I'm sorry. Go lay down. Shh. Come here. All right, go lay down. You're good. I get deer that run out back sometime. I think he hears them.
All good?
Yeah.
How do we get them all on the same page? And how do we use our instructional coaches? And how do we define what this is? I want to end today by talking a little bit about something that many of us have seen before. I know we've talked about it a lot on this show, but it's called the innovation adoption curve. And I've been doing a little bit of research on this, but we've all seen the adoption curve. On one side, you have your generals, the people your go-getters, your first responders, and then basically as the curve goes up, you have your early adopters, you have your majorities, and then at the end they call it their laggards, the people who don't quite move unless the entire herd moves.
Yeah, we call them the resistors,
The resistors, right. And I think if you're looking at your school, you can figure out, okay, if I got 20 teachers in a building, which ones do I go to first with that new app, that new technology? Who do I put on the leadership teams and stuff like that? And who maybe do I wait until next year to find? Or who do I go to and, hey, Jim, are you interested in this? Mrs. Jones and I are doing it. Do you want to join us, right? How do you help out with this curve? I'm curious from the administrative point of view. I'm sure you've had situations where you're trying to bring out, iPads, laptops, whatever it is. Right. Certain buildings want to move and certain buildings don't. How do you handle this curve from an administrative point of view when some principals are ready to go and some aren't quite there yet?
Yeah, so at my last job, when we were rolling out and going one-to-one Chromebooks, as I said, we started off, I bought, I don't know, of our 60 teachers, I think I bought like 10 Chromebooks initially and gave them I want to say 3 to each of those groups that you just defined. I knew my lead people were going to get them. Hey, go, prosper. But then I also got some ones that I thought are going to be probably more struggling to integrate technology, because not only that it's not their style, but it's also not their subject. When you got a Latin teacher, how is that teacher going to use technology in their classroom? So, and then when you get them and they start getting ideas, then you can they get them to talk to other teachers in their department or other teachers in the school to adopt it. So that's sort of the way that you do it. And it's kind of I forget the guy's name, but he talks about leading from the middle. Mm-hmm. Might be Malcolm Gladwell, one of those guys, talks about leading from the middle. And you don't bring the upper down, but you bring everybody up, then they become little minor leaders in their little groups. You're still going to have your resistors and you're still going to have them, but I think some of that has to come from, yes, I was an administrator in the school, but I didn't have the power of a principal. Mm-hmm. So you have to get the principal to say, look, they must do this, or they should be doing this more. And it helps with if the building leadership encourages that. And that's how it gets more adoption, And then again, I'm going back to, I'm not talking about using technology for technology's sake, but truly integrating it.
And that is and I'm glad you said that, that is the thesis of where we're going with all of this stuff. How do you get your early adopters to figure out what digital learning is? How do you put a definition on it? How do you build a game plan? How do you make sure that this is part of the culture? Because ultimately, all of this stuff that we're going to be discussing here over the next few episodes is all about how do we raise the bar in the classroom? How do we help student achievement? And I would say to incorporate all of that together, how do we build a standards-based curriculum to do that?
Yeah, but getting teachers, showing examples too of what some of the teachers are doing really helps too. We had a teacher who was doing Google Slides, making e-textbooks. So, look, you could get kids to collaborate and create a chapter or part of a chapter of a digital textbook. And then at the end of the year, you have a new textbook, that all the kids can share. Putting PowerPoints in your notes in a Google Classroom is not integrating technology. You know what I mean? It's not going to help them. Getting kids to collaborate on a project that's going to be beneficial to them and allow them to retain the information because they're interacting with it and they're self-checking, self-correcting. I don't know what the proper term is there. Mm-hmm. Then that's beneficial to everybody. and it's beneficial to future students, and it gives the teachers another resource.
I think these topics are ones that need to be brought up more often in coaching circles. I think these topics are important to be used in administrative circles. I know these are topics that we talk about on our Instructional Coaches Network that you can find by going over to askthetechcoach.com. And you can go into our Facebook group, our LinkedIn group. We have one on K12 leaders too, depending on where you feel comfortable sharing information and having these conversations. But I really want to hear from you out there, the listener. How are you in your district defining digital learning? Right? Is it we're a Chromebook school and thanks, or we've got pathways and this particular school is a video school and this one over here is a STEM school? And like, how is your district defining what this looks like? Next week on the episode, please, make sure that you're hitting that like button, subscribe to this very show here, because next week we're going to talk about how do you create that vision? What does the vision look like? Who creates the vision? Can it be done alone? Is it something that a coach can do? How do you create this vision for what digital learning can look like in the classroom? You don't want to miss that episode. Stick around because we got a lot of these concepts coming up, and I want to make sure that we are here each and every week to help you guys create a standards-based and vertically aligned digital learning curriculum that is going to help out your teachers, align your professional development, and raise student achievement in the classroom. Jim, I want to say two things. First of all, thank you for helping us out here. You've been a big influence in this show. Maybe you haven't always been a guest, but you and I have had some great conversations over the last many years that have led to some great episodes here.
Yes, it has. Lots of times you're driving, I'm driving, and we're talking on the phone. Right?
We have our own little PLN, and I hope that continues into the future here. Where does somebody get a hold of you, and how do we learn more about the great things that you're doing?
I am Pfeiffer 1863 online, FIFER 1863 for all social studies all the time. And my website is teachthecivilwar.com. So I highly
recommend checking all of that out. Great WordPress website, right?
Yeah, awesome WordPress. Just recently redesigned, thank you.
Nice. That wraps up this episode. Don't forget to head on over to askthetechcoach.com. Lots of blogs, lots of free templates, lots of great things, and we are just getting started. A lot of amazing things. And again, next week, come back where we're going to be talking about how do you create your vision for digital learning in the classroom if you're a digital learning leader and instructional coach. This is Ask the Tech Coach. My name is Jeff Bradbury, and on behalf of everybody here in the TeacherCast Educational Network, have a great time, keep up the great work in your classrooms, and continue sharing your passions with your students.
You've been listening to Ask the Tech Coach, hosted by Jeff Bradbury of the TeacherCast Educational Network. Please reach out to the show with all of your questions on Twitter at AskTheTechCoach or online at www.askthetechcoach.com. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And please take a moment to write a review in the App Store.